Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm so happy you could make it. And as you know, my name is Amy Reimer, and you're here for the workshop called How to Start and End Difficult Conversations with Confidence. If you struggle with starting difficult conversations, you have come to the right place today. You know, the scary thing about starting these conversations is that since someone else is in it with you, you can't always know exactly what's going to happen until after you get started. So, this webinar is perfect for you if you worry that the other person isn't going to listen to you, that when you ask for what you want, you still might not get it, and that you will be too nervous or emotional to start the conversation, or if you worry that you'll make the situation worse by speaking up. Even though you can't control what happens, you can do your best to prepare for a positive outcome. And by the end of the webinar today, you'll know exactly what to do to make these conversations easier and even what to do when things don't go the way you planned. I'm going to give you 4 very practical steps that I've used to start these difficult conversations. And then at the end, we're going to talk about another 2 steps that I've used in order to end those conversations in a way that makes you feel good and hopefully makes the other person feel good too. And the goal is that you're going to start to feel confident when you speak up instead of wishing that you'd never even tried. One of the biggest reasons I do this work is because I see all the time with clients, family, friends, that so many women feel nervous about speaking up for what they really need, and they don't have access to tools to help them ask for what they need when it counts the most. When you start using these strategies that I'm going to give you today, you'll have the confidence to stop avoiding and start having those conversations so that you can feel relieved and really get what you need. Maybe you don't speak up because you don't want to offend someone or upset them. You worry that people will judge you or tell you you're wrong. Maybe even you worry that someone is going to think that you're ungrateful. But what if you needed to talk about something really, really important, like your health or your dreams? Would you be able to speak up then? I know you have a courageous spirit and you want to do good things in the world. How can you do them if you don't stand up for what you want and what you know is right for you and those around you? I've been there. I've avoided some conversations for days, weeks, or even months because I didn't know what to say or when to say it. And one of those conversations was when I had to tell my boss that I was ready to move on from a job. And around this time last year, I left El Salvador after living there for 2 years and working with a nonviolence and trauma healing program. And I was nervous to tell my boss because I was worried that she and the other people I worked with would be really disappointed. And I also kind of wondered if they would judge me about leaving in general. But that was my focus for 2 years. It meant a lot to me. I didn't want to offend them by saying this wasn't the most important thing to me anymore. And then I didn't want to seem ungrateful about what it had taught me and the experiences that I had, because those experiences were the things that were moving me forward. So that was really hard. And there was also a part of me that worried that the work itself wouldn't actually get done if I wasn't there to help, or that they would feel more burdened by having one less person on their team. So it's really easy to relate to these feelings of feeling responsible, right? I mean, I had given a lot as well. And in the end, they were grateful for everything I'd done. And, they wanted the best for me and they really, really supported me. But the reason I was able to have that conversation is because it became clear to me that I had to let go of that work in order to move on with the next step, which, as it turns out, it was this coaching business. And I knew I needed to give it my full attention. So what I think is really important about this, and what I would like for you to think about, is what would it be like to be the woman who says exactly what she needs? What's the one thing in your life right now that you know you're feeling nervous about? And look at how that's impacting other areas of your life. In your relationship, your life's work, or your connection to yourself. Think about that and think about what if you had the tools to approach that situation with more confidence and clarity in what you feel and what you want to be different. And also to do that in a way that makes you feel good about how the conversation was handled and what makes other people feel good too. And it's really just about opening a space for honest connection. And what I want you to hear is that it's not really just about the difficult conversations. This is about being the type of woman who can live and speak honestly. A woman who knows what she wants and is willing to speak up for that. That's the woman who might be uncomfortable, but is willing to prepare herself to get closer to the life that she really needs and deserves. And this does take practice. But when you practice what I'm going to teach you today and blend it with your natural desire to be kind to others, you're going to find the right balance for you. And you'll start to see these beautiful shifts in your relationships. So today, I'm actually going to focus on some examples of relationships with the most important people in your life. But I really think that you're going to see how these tools can apply to all the relationships in your life. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. And I really want you to stay to the end because the final piece that I'm teaching will really tie it all together. Otherwise, you might have a hard time just being consistent with some of the strategies that I'm teaching you today. And for those of you who stick around, I have a special offer for you. So if you haven't already, grab a pen and paper and let's get started. So, how do you start a difficult conversation? The answer I have for you might surprise you a little bit because it's not really as much about the exact words that come out of your mouth as it is about what you do before you start the conversation. So the secret's really in all how you prepare. So the first thing to do is to start building trust. And trust is kind of like a puzzle. It's the foundation, the framework that you put around the edge. When you start a puzzle, you look for all the flat-sided pieces because that's going to create the framework. And trust is like the framework in conflict resolution. It's the way that you're going to be able to build that foundation, that framework around, so that when you get in the middle of the issue, you're going to have an easier time solving it. So there are two sides of trust, right? Do others trust you? And do you trust others? So I would like for you to just take a look at this list. We'll start with, do others trust you? And take a look at this list and see if there are one or two things on here that you can relate to and practice this week. I'm going to read through them and you can just jot down one or two that speak to you. Follow through on what you say you're going to do. Include others in decisions that impact them. Don't gossip or talk behind their back. Don't hold back information that they request from you. Don't take more credit than is really deserved. Don't spin the truth rather than tell it like it is. And don't blame others. Now, I know that some of these seem like really basic, right? But I'm going to share a story of how these simple things can really make huge shifts and open the door for more connection and conversation. So I have a really dear friend who I've been supporting through some challenges with her sister. And they were having problems getting along because her sister was holding back information about their mother's care. So like things like which facility their mom was in or what health problems she was having. And it created a lot of distrust with my friend. So, well, basically then let's look at these two. So her sister was holding back information that my friend was asking for. And then my friend was actually blaming her sister a lot for the mismanagement of the care of their mom. And naturally, she was really angry about what she saw as bad treatment. So my friend was also creating distrust. And so this is just an example of how if two people are doing the same thing, if two people are creating the same distrust, then it can really create a difficult situation. And really, for years, they hadn't even been able to be in the same room together. Her sister wouldn't even allow her to come visit her mom if her sister was already there and planning to be there at the same time. So about 2 months ago, my friend decided to stop blaming her sister for all the bad decisions she was making. She decided to let go because she realized she really just didn't have any control. And even under these really difficult situations, the really difficult circumstances about her mom's health, what happened is that even today, she told me, she said her sister called her to tell her about what was happening, that her mom was put in a wheelchair by the nurse and they were like strolling around the halls or something. Something really simple, but for my friend was like incredible because her sister never used to share that kind of information with her, could barely be in the same room. And so these simple little things can really make a big difference. So the next part of trust is, do you trust others? So let's talk about what you might be able to do to trust them more. So first is just really notice that you're hesitant to trust. And then, in order to be willing to give them your trust, consider, what do you need to know? Or what evidence do you need to see from them in order to feel safe to trust this person? Do you need specific information? Are there expectations that you need to be clarified? Or are there agreements that need to be met? And then, instead of always making the other person wait for you to trust them, and you're sitting there hoping that they're going to just start acting differently, try asking for what you need and see what happens. So, for example, you could say to your husband, this is a situation about daycare, let's say. I know you've been trying to get your schedule changed at work so that you can pick up James from daycare. But since you've been late a few times, I'm having trouble trusting that you'll be there to pick him up. And the daycare is charging us an extra 15, well, no. And the daycare is charging us extra money for every 15 minutes we're late. And then here's the part that you can ask for the change. Would you be willing to talk to your boss again this week in order to see how soon you'll be able to change your hours? That would make me feel really confident that you'll be more consistent in the future. And then here's where you could actually offer a second option. You could offer, in the meantime, would you be willing to call me when you can't leave work on time and I'll pick up James instead? That way we're working together to avoid the fees until you're able to adjust your schedule more permanently. And then at the end, asking, would you be willing to do that? Or is that something that sounds okay to you? And that would be asking for what you need, because if it's not reasonable to the other person, they have a chance then to tell you, and you can come up with another solution that they can agree on and follow through with. Disappointments and misunderstandings are a completely natural part of relationships. It's normal not to trust someone if they've let you down in the past, and even in the most trusting relationships, people still let each other down. But the goal is that when that trust is broken, instead of blaming each other, you can really try to understand what assumptions you had about the situation. And through that process, broken trust really actually becomes an opportunity to build stronger trust in your relationship. So, building trust was step 1. Step 2 is to set an intention. So basically, know what you want to get out of the interaction. It can be something very solution-oriented, which might be like, I want us to decide which car to buy. Or something about the interaction itself, which is, I want to share my feelings as honestly as possible. Oh, got it. So setting the intention is not meant to be a practice in manipulation. It's really about letting yourself actually choose and ask for what you want. And it's not selfish either, right? Because we have needs, and when we know what they are, it's so natural just to want to clearly express them. Your intention could even include, what do I want him or her to get out of the conversation? What do I want him or her to feel as a result of this interaction? And again, it's not manipulation if it comes from a sincere place of caring for the other person's needs and just wanting the best for both of you. So that's why we build the trust, because then you're in a place where you actually want goodness for the other person and they want it for you. So let's do a check. Ask yourself, what is your intention for that difficult conversation that you were thinking about at the beginning of the webinar? So for instance, do you want to ask for help? Or do you intend to find out what you can do to support the other person's efforts in something? Then commit to behaviors that reflect those intentions. And this goes back to building trust again. So when your actions reflect your intention, you can build trust because you're being consistent with what others are seeing, and they can see that everything is making sense to them. So the next part is just if you're having trouble identifying your attention, one way to help you get clarity is to do something called an I statement. And this is going to help you figure out how you feel and what you want. So one of the reasons it can be hard to know your intention is because sometimes we've had, let's say it's somebody who's been a part of your life forever. It's, sometimes we've had a lot of experiences with this person that have built up over time. And so we choose an issue or a topic that is just far too big. So we think of all the things that this person has done to us and we don't even know where to begin. But the best thing to do in this situation is to really start small on one recent specific conflict or situation that you've had with this person. A recent specific situation that you've had with this person. And then you're going to work on answering these 4 questions. So, and I'm going to repeat these again, so if you're jotting stuff down, you'll have another chance. What specific thing happened to make you upset? And how did that situation make you feel? Why do you think it made you feel that way? And what do you want to see happen differently next time? So I'm going to give you an example, and here's where you can jot it down again to just the main pieces that you see here. So let's say that you've been talking to your parents about a change in careers, and you know already, because you've had conversations about it, that they don't really approve of it. So you can use the I statement to reflect on how and what you would like them to do differently. So the first one, what happened? So when you told me you'll be heartbroken if I don't stay in the family business, how did you feel? I felt sad or angry or frustrated or any million of emotions, right? Why? Because I don't want to disappoint you or hurt you, but I really feel like this career change is right for me. And what I would like to see happen in the future is that when we talk about this, I might have written that wrong, but when we talk about this, that you try to support me with a positive attitude. And also, it's perfectly normal to express your emotions. But if you're worried about getting too nervous or angry or maybe even crying, your emotions might prevent you from expressing your ideas clearly. So the important thing to remember is just that if people can't understand you, they're not going to be able to help you out. So the I statement is a really great way to collect your thoughts long before you start the conversation. And it's a really great way just to get clear on how you're feeling and to process those emotions. So if you're somebody who's worried about that, this is going to help you out. So I was working with a client, and she had a friend who she realized like this friend was demanding a lot from her and just constantly in touch and would get upset if she didn't respond right away or, always support her in certain ways. So I worked with this client on doing an I statement and just really, because she wasn't really sure what she was bothered by and what was worrying her and how she was feeling. So the I statement really, really helped her clear it up. And so this is something you can do in any situation with any relationship just to help you kind of figure out, okay, what am I feeling? Because, a lot of times we really just kind of ignore our feelings or stuff them or just let it go, and it's an opportunity to really identify. But then one other thing to mention is that if you still really don't feel comfortable moving forward after doing the I statement, take more time to talk it through with somebody. Practice what you'll say, and maybe even just get a little more settled before you talk to the other person. Because, even after you prepare, it's completely normal if you still feel a little bit hesitant to move forward. So if you do have time and you're thinking about an issue that maybe can wait a little bit, you can always practice this reflecting with the I statement on smaller issues that are happening in your life right now. So like let's say this week you practice on some of the smaller issues that come up. So maybe it's something with like a cashier, or maybe it's a neighbor or a coworker, like something a little less serious or less important than the most difficult conversation you're waiting to have. So now that we've set the framework and set an intention, you're feeling really prepared and can move forward with these next steps. So, I missed one. So how to start the conversation. The third step is to set a time to talk. So you'll want to bring up the fact that you want to talk to the other person. And here are some ideas to help you really, because this is a little bit tricky. You want to stay confident while you bring up the topic to the other person, but you also want to be open because, as we've talked about before, there are two people or more in this situation. And so you always want to try to stay flexible, but have a sense, like we did with the I statement, have a sense of what it is you want to see happen, how you're feeling, and that's going to really set your foundation for moving forward. So let's say you haven't, let's see, what would be an example? So let's say you're moving across country with your young family, which means leaving your parents in your hometown behind. And you haven't talked to them about it yet. You're not really sure how to approach it. You know it's going to be a big, big change, and you're just a little worried about how they're going to take it. You don't want to hurt their feelings, and you just want them to know that they're loved and cared for, even though you really want to make this big change. So you could say something like, I'd like to talk to you about something we're considering, and I hope you'll support us. This decision could impact you, so I hope we can look for solutions together that'll work for all of us. And in this way, you're preparing them, letting them know there's something on the horizon, and you're also creating some allies rather than enemies to help you get what you need. So, and obviously, if this is too formal for you, you can totally mix it up. Like the wording can be mixed up a million different ways. This is just a starting point. Now, if your parents tend to be a little bit more influential and controlling in your life, this might be an opportunity to be a little bit more bold and a little bit more direct. So you can say something like, I'd like to do something that's really important to me, and I hope you'll support me. I really believe I'm making the right decision. So you can tell the difference, right? That one is a little bit more like, I'm kind of sort of doing this. Like, I'm kind of doing this. And you're looking for an opportunity to tell them about it. So after you bring up the fact that you'd like to talk about something, you want to set a time and a place to have that conversation. And you do want to be as specific as possible because, it's just so easy, right, to just ignore the fact that you've made plans to talk about something, and it can be really uncomfortable. So by setting the time and the place, you're helping yourself to move into that next step. And it helps hold you a little bit more accountable and hold the other person more accountable. So, let's just go back to that for a sec. So you could say, are you free later to talk about it at my house? Or can we talk about it at breakfast before work tomorrow? Or can we talk about it tomorrow at your house when I get off work? So you really just want enough time and space so that the conversation is, so that you can, accomplish what you would like to accomplish, and that you both have enough time to really pay attention to each other and be present. So the fourth step is to have the conversation. That's the goal, right? I mean, we're getting there. We're getting there. And, I can even feel it in myself when I get to this point where it's like, yes, like you still have to have the conversation. So, I mean, nobody's going to judge you. I'm not going to judge you. If you get to this point and you're just like, I just can't, right? That's why go back to those other steps. Just keep practicing those other steps. When you do the I statement, that's going to help you. Building trust is going to be enormously helpful. So stay in that place. 1, 2, 3. Steps 1, 2, 3. Like keep rotating them and just mixing and matching because you'll get there. You'll get there. And so now I'll share with you just some thoughts about really starting the conversation. So first is really so simple. Expect the best. Like, it's really such a foundational idea, because if you go into it based on what you've experienced with this person in the past, and maybe it's been negative, you're going to expect more negative from them, right? But really, if you go into it saying, well, I've prepared, I've done my best, I've set this up the best I can, and there's a 50-50 chance it could go well, it could go not. I'm going to choose the 50 that it's going to go well. And that's really how I approach it too, because it just sets the tone. It really does. It sets the tone for how you're expressing yourself, how you're showing up to that conversation, and it's just far more positive. And I'll say that when I was working in El Salvador, the workshops that we did, it was incredible how many people commented on how often they use this idea of expect the best, because this was a big kind of concept in the workshops we would do. And people were always talking about how it shifted situations for them. It helped them be more open to new solutions and listen to others and be more patient and kind. I mean, it does so much good. So clearly I care about expecting the best. Okay, so remove distractions. If the time comes, you've set the place and the time, and you're not in a private enough place, you can always ask to move to another space. And I would suggest that, if you're inside and you want to go outside, or, you're in a car and you want to wait until you're stopped, like that would be a good idea. So remove distractions. And then, so valuable, thank them for sitting down with you. A lot of times, the lack of appreciation might even be the cause of a conflict. So by thanking them for taking the time, showing the effort, being willing to be there with you in this moment, it really does have a lot of value, and it sets the tone. It just really sets the tone. And this depends on the person. It's going to depend on who you're talking to and what you think you need in the situation. But, I would suggest, like, each of you can set one or two guidelines for the conversation. So, you could say something like, before we get started, I just want to ask if you have anything that you might need from me in order to feel comfortable to start this conversation. So, for example, I would like to ask that we put our phones on silent and don't look at them while we're talking, so that we don't have any distractions and can be totally present for each other. Is that okay with you? And then, depending on how the person's, they'll probably be like, yeah, that's fine. And then, is there anything else that you'd like to ask that we do so that we can both feel heard and understood while we talk? And then, he or she might say, yeah, like, don't interrupt me. So be open, be receptive, be open to what they have to say about what their guidelines and what they need from you, because this is again building trust. And so, okay, we can agree on that. And then, obviously you want it to be as balanced as possible. So if you offer something, be sure you're asking them to offer something too. They don't have to, but just so they know that they're welcome to offer something. And then lastly, be flexible, stay open. Since somebody else is involved in this, you're not talking to a mirror. They're going to have opinions, they're going to have needs, and they're going to have ideas to offer you. So you'll be more likely to find a solution that works for you both if you stay open to hearing their perspective and you stay flexible. Okay. Let's say you're at the end of the conversation. It went amazing. You're feeling really good. All that effort was worth it. You're feeling confident. Let's say things just went amazing, right? The two things that you can do at this point are really, really simple. So one is just to set a time for follow-up. This is really important because sometimes it's really easy for us to say in the moment, yeah, that sounds great. I'm in. Okay, I can do that. Sure, I promise. Yeah. And then it just doesn't happen. So set a time to check in a week, a day, a month, whatever it is that makes sense to you both, so that you can see how it's going. And it doesn't have to be like, I'm going to check in on you and be sure that you're doing what you said you're going to. It could be, let's just check in a week to see how it's going for both of us and see if we need to adjust. And it doesn't sound like you're tracking their every move. And then the second thing is, again, thank them for working with you. Appreciate that you were both there and you got through it and you finished it and it turned out just fine. Okay, so this is the second step at the end of the conversation. Let's say it did not go the way you had planned. I mean, what is a plan anyways, right? You're going into it, you don't really know what's going to happen, right? You can do your best to prepare. But let's say it's like, they're not being really receptive. So let's say the first thing is, they're getting really defensive. And it's really important just to acknowledge, okay, something's happening here. You're acknowledging to yourself, like acknowledging, okay, I see their ego. This is their sense of self. I'm not going to attack them. We all have an ego. I know it exists. And if you see someone that's being really like counterproductive or unhelpful, even if it's not benefiting them, you know there's something emotional there. There's a good chance their ego has taken over. So understand the ego is part of their belief system. It's just, it's there. It doesn't mean you have to necessarily react to it or respond to it. It's just acknowledging. It's just an acknowledgement. And then know that you do not have to defend yourself. This is really one of my like most favorite strategies because it feels so good. It feels so good. Your feelings are your feelings. There's nothing anybody can say to make you wrong about your feelings. And if somebody's coming back to you really defensively, or in the case of my client, her friend was telling her, well, tell me specific examples of when that happened, and really getting intense about prove to me. But you don't have to prove it. Your feelings are legit no matter in what circumstances or context they happen in. And sometimes you can use this little strategy called a broken record. So, if this person is getting upset, you can always say, well, it was important to me that we have an open conversation, so I'm really just sharing with you how I feel. It's important to me that we have an open conversation, and I'm sharing with you how I feel. So you have a response, you're saying something, and the broken record part is that you're just repeating back the same thing every time, And it's not repeating it back based on what they're telling you. It's repeating back based on where you're coming from and that you're just expressing yourself. And then another thing that will help a lot with that too is to speak from your own experience. So a lot of times people say, well, like, that's, you're wrong. That's not the facts. That's not the truth. Well, when you speak from your experience, even if your experience doesn't match what the other person is saying, it's still valid, it's still correct, because it was your reality and it was true for you. It doesn't mean that you can't be open to seeing things in a new way, or that in the future you won't change your mind, but that experience was true for you. So know that when you speak from your experience, that's a really powerful way to have a conversation, because it doesn't have to involve facts. You don't have to feel defensive or prove your point. And then this is a really practical tool, conflict resolution tool. Just notice where you agree and where you disagree. This is going to help you in the next step. So, it's pretty clear, right? So when you acknowledge that, you're validating each other's points of view, but you don't have to agree with each other's points of view in that moment. So then the next moment would be looking for common ground. So when you've acknowledged where you agree and where you disagree, now you can say, well, for example, everyone wants to feel safe and secure. So whether you're on one side and this person's on the other. Everybody wants to feel safe and secure. That's common ground. That's where, whether we buy the house alarm or we don't, or we put new locks up on the doors or we don't, all of these measures, all of this conversation is really around, we want to feel safe and secure. So this can be a great way to bring a sense of peace to a conversation. And really, you don't necessarily even have to make a decision at this point. You're just commenting and acknowledging what is the common ground between us. You could even say, I haven't come to a decision about this, but from what we've been saying, it seems like we both value having a safe way to get around. Or it seems like we both value living in a safe community. Include the other person in making the decisions about what to do next. So here's where you can get a little bit more into the problem solving. You can ask, what can we do to fix the problem? Or where should we go from here? And if possible, identify at least one thing, one action that each of you or both of you can do together. Like each of you can do alone, or you could do it together. And then ask that the other person support that action. And be honest. Be honest with yourself and be honest with the other person, because you want to really genuinely explore whether you can or cannot do what you're agreeing to. And you can give yourself permission to say no or not right now, and give that permission to the other person too, because you want them to support the action. Because really, in the end, if they say yeah just to say yeah and get out of the conversation, he or she thinking of a he's not going to follow through. So be sure that you're both honestly evaluating the options, honestly evaluating the solutions that you're exploring, and give each other that space to do that, because in the end you want the solution to stick, and that's going to help you do that. If they can't support the action, so if they say, no, that's not going to work for me, you could ask for a cooling off period. So, say, okay, well, it seems like we're not going to come up with a solution at this time. Can we revisit the topic again later? So there might be a time, this might be a time when you agree to disagree, or maybe you decide that you might need somebody else to be a part of the conversation to kind of help you both or the group walk through the issue. And so, as I just mentioned, the next step would be to set up a time to follow up and check in. So, especially if you've been having a challenge to come to a solution in that conversation, you want to be sure that you're giving yourselves an opportunity to revisit that topic, or kind of give yourself the space to explore on your own and then come back together to discuss again. Because that's the worst, right? You go through this difficult conversation, you're both stressed, you're both unsure of what the solutions are, and in the end you leave the conversation and nothing happens, and you both go on as if you didn't have the conversation at all. So really just say, okay, maybe if you didn't finish the conversation, you could say, okay, it sounds like we need more time to talk about this. Would tomorrow afternoon be okay? Or tonight after dinner, or next week, and set up a follow-up time to continue. And again, the last step, really, don't forget, even when you disagree, even when things aren't going the way you planned, even when you're so frustrated and you're just feeling awful, thank the person for working with you. And you know what? The reason why is not to be manipulative, but to be genuinely appreciating their effort and your effort. But what I've seen is that when people are not agreeing, and at the end there's a sense of appreciation for the effort, it can sometimes transform the discussion. So maybe you're even getting up to walk away, you're finished the conversation, you thank them. They might add on something else that shifts the situation, or somehow suddenly throws out a solution that you hadn't already thought of. So be open to that, and certainly be open to transformation at any point in the conversation, because the opportunity is always there. Okay, so that was that was a lot of good stuff, and just want to give us some space for a moment. So I've used these steps that we talked about today, and I've been where you are right now, or where you've been to, and it is hard. I mean, I think of that conversation I was telling you earlier about leaving that job. I mean, that was not easy. There are things I'm thinking about right now that I'm going to need to have conversations around. And sometimes they're the biggest thing, and sometimes they're not, but they're still difficult. But I really do believe that you can be nice and get what you need. And when you communicate the way I've taught you today, you're going to see that not only do you feel good, but the other person feels good too. Because it's the worst when you go into a conversation and you know that you're not, neither one of you is feeling good about it. And sometimes the outcome doesn't even matter as much as how the situation was handled. And so when it's handled poorly, you just don't feel good. So I would like now to invite you to close your eyes for a minute and feel into what it would be like to end that difficult conversation. That conversation that you thought of at the beginning of the webinar, what would it feel like to end that difficult conversation? And to know that you've become a better version of yourself because of it. It might not even have had the outcome that you had hoped for, but you still feel the growth. And the feeling gets even better if you know that the same is true for the other person. And through that uncertainty, through that discomfort, somehow you understood each other better. And now open your eyes and feel what your reality is today. How do you feel right now about starting that conversation? And if you're here today, the reality might be that you're still scared to death to go into those conversations. You don't know how the other person's going to react. But those difficult conversations have so much potential to mend rather than end your relationship. It's not easy to say, I don't agree with you, or I don't like it when you blah, blah, blah. It's not easy, but it's worth it to go through that discomfort to find out that a stronger relationship and a stronger you is possible. And remember, it's okay to practice those ideas we talked about in really small ways before you start the more difficult conversations. So I would like to suggest that you give yourself permission to experiment a little bit, to build your confidence. Because this is hard. It's hard. And it's about finding the right balance for you. So I'm throwing out suggestions. You're going to pick and choose which of these ideas is going to work for you. So be bold, but do it in a way that feels right to you. And if this still feels scary to you, I want you to know that you're completely normal. I still get butterflies when I start one of these conversations. But the only thing between where you are today and where you want to be is really more practice, to get practicing in these confidence building strategies. And in order to get to that place, it helps to have guidance, knowing where to put your energy each day, what to do, when to do it, someone to role play with and give you feedback as you take action, because sometimes it's really important to adjust to what's happening. And if you're ready to take that next step and you know you don't want to keep trying to figure this out on your own anymore, I would like to invite you to sign up for a free 30-minute clarity session with me. In this call, we'll talk about the times when you get stuck, and I'll help you get clear on what you can do to handle those situations. And I'll also give you a specific idea or strategy that you can put into practice right away to get you unstuck, to get you moving forward. And if you'd like to take advantage of this, and you know you want to have a free session with me right now, then you just need to open up a new tab or window in your internet browser. And you're going to type in amyreimer.com/free. And when you get to that page, you're going to see my calendar. And on that calendar, I have available space. So look for the available spaces this week. I do have limited spaces for these sessions. So if you're really serious about getting unstuck, I'm here. I'm here for you. I'm here. So I really encourage you to go to that website and not miss out on the chance to bring more confidence and kindness into your relationships. And now I would like to give you some time to ask some questions about anything that you've heard today. I think we have a good amount of time, so we have some time for at least 2 or 3. We'll see how big the questions are, but all you have to do is type into your chat box. You'll see it in your the control panel for GoToMeeting. So in the chat box right now, just type in your question. It'll only go to me. Nobody else will see it. And I'm going to answer these in the next few minutes. So just going to read through. Okay. So this is a great one. Okay, what do I do? What do I do if she didn't follow through on what we agreed on? Okay, this is great. So if the conversation has ended, you made some agreements, or maybe you even made plans to follow up, and somehow the follow-up didn't happen. Really, you just want to be honest. Be honest with yourself, be honest with the other person. Really look at, did you drop the ball? And if you did, be honest, say it as quickly and honestly as you can, and name the situation for what it really is. And then if the other person did as well, be open to hearing that from them. Everyone knows what it feels like to drop the ball. So, maybe it's you overextended yourself, you committed to an agreement that you couldn't really follow through with. And now is a chance to really kind of, for lack of a better word, renegotiate. So now's a chance to say, okay, why didn't that work? And what can we do now to move forward? So get curious. What are new opportunities that may now be open to you that weren't before? New options that you can consider. Also reflect on what the experience has taught you. What did it teach you about this relationship or about life? And then, for me, all things come back to rebuilding trust. So now is an opportunity to take responsibility for restoring trust. Even if you're not at fault, like quote, at fault, right? So, dig deep, go back to the behaviors we mentioned earlier to build trust in somebody else, and also be the person that they can trust. So look at those behaviors and say, am I doing any of this? And just be open, be open to revisiting that conversation. Ask for another time. It's really just rinse and repeat. So you just go back to building trust again. Start from the beginning. Okay, so the question, how do you prepare for a conversation with someone who tends to be aggressive or verbally abusive? This, I think, actually has a really similar answer. I think if somebody is aggressive, it can be difficult to want to go into that conversation. And I just want to emphasize too, the really important thing is that you feel safe going into the conversation. So if this person has a tendency to get angry or to get defensive or to be, aggressive or verbally abusive, I would certainly work on building trust. Just emphasize that, do a lot of that. You can also test out the conversations before you go in. So what we were talking about earlier with, there's something really important that I'd like to talk to you about. When would be a good time for you? Or you can be more specific than that. It's like, I'd like to talk about what happened yesterday. Would now be a good time? Invite them into the conversation because, sometimes people react that way for lots of different reasons, but sometimes if they're invited in and they have a little more control and choice over whether they start that conversation, sometimes that can shift their energy. So I would really suggest that as well, is consider how you're approaching these conversations, and just make an effort to invite him into the conversation, or her, I'm not sure. Yeah. So look for opportunities to invite that person to the conversation. Okay, so that's another similar one. What do I do if the other person doesn't want to listen and always gets defensive when I try to talk? Same thing, build trust for sure. Oh, I like this one. Well, I like them all. Okay, so this is great. So basically, is there ever a time when it's okay to just like not be so nice? So I would really just ask back, how does it feel when you're not so nice? Because I know for me, I know that I've kind of missed the mark when I don't feel good about the outcome of a situation, or when I'm in the middle of it, I'm like, oh, this does not feel right. I feel really bad. And because honestly, like, we're good, genuine, honest, nice people, right? We're not out there trying to make people feel bad. So when you do feel a little bad, I think it's an indication, it's a really great sign to say, okay, how could I shift this? And just paying attention to that. Maybe in the conversations as you go forward, pay attention to how you're feeling in the middle of a conversation. Because really, I just fully believe that there's never a time when being nice is like wrong or inappropriate. Well, and it kind of like hits to the core of like why I do this work, why I believe it so deeply, because being nice being nice is love, and love transforms, whether it's visible at that moment or not. Love absolutely transforms. It's energy, it's powerful. And to be kind and patient and generous is always a correct response. So it's not the easy response all the time, and it's certainly not always what we want to do, but it is a response. It is a legitimate response, and I know the world will probably try to tell us a lot that, stand up for yourself, be tougher, you need to be louder, like stronger, like do this, do that. But I just don't believe it's true. So I would say what it comes back to feeling, like how do you feel? Look for that right balance for you. And what's that right mix of kindness and confidence? How does that feel? What does that look like? Because it's not one size fits all, that's for sure, And really just practicing is what helps you to kind of get that right balance. Okay, great. So we are coming to the end here. So thank you so much for those questions. Those were wonderful contributions. I really appreciate that. So what would it be like to get into bed tonight and not lie awake thinking about that conversation that you need to have? How would you feel if you felt confident to start that conversation in a way that you were certain was going to create that connection, the clarity that you're looking for in your relationship with this person? And what if you could do that in a way that felt good to you? Like we were just saying, not being mean, not being aggressive or manipulative, just being kind and confident. And that's what I really, really, really want for you. So I want to offer again, if you feel like you need more support right now, sign up for the Clarity Call this weekend. I'm here for you. You can do this. And thank you so much for being here today. It was my pleasure. I hope you enjoyed learning about how to start and end difficult conversations with confidence, and really how you can apply these strategies to your daily life, because they're practical, they work. Practice them, use them, mix and match them. And I hope you walk away today feeling really inspired, excited, and ready to take some bold action. So thank you again, and have a great rest of your evening.